Welcome back, Suzanne, to another one of our beautiful fireside chats as we get ready to prepare for our Unleash the Power of Your Story masterclass. I really do have to say, I am enjoying sitting down, having these conversations, the conversations we're having before the conversations we're having after the conversation. The comments that we're receiving, the reach outs that we're receiving from everyone has just been absolutely amazing.
I'm excited to be here, and it's always interesting to see what people take away from what we put out there and the questions
Mhm.
that come back. And every time I hear a question, it takes me back to when I started, because I
Right.
had many of the same questions. So hopefully today we'll be able to unpack some of those and shed some light on some burning questions.
Yeah. And today is one of those conversations, one of those topics. Like I said, we get these questions all the time, but I definitely see myself in the questions, and so hopefully I'll be able to, along with you, shed some light to our super achievers who also have these questions as well. And so I'm just going to go ahead and ask the super achievers out there. And I'm gonna make this session interactive today because I really want to hear more from everyone. So if you have ever felt stuck on how to tell your story or unsure how to truly engage with your audience, I want you to go ahead and drop a yes in the comment section and let us know that this is a struggle that you have, a challenge that you would definitely like to overcome. And so today we're going to sit down and we're going to talk about overcoming the barriers that stand between you and storytelling mastery. And so we're not just going to answer the questions. Hopefully, we'll be able to provide some breakthroughs in the way of transformation that will help you be able to share your story better. So today, it's all about those storytelling secrets on Veal. But before we jump in to our topics today, I just want to take a moment to welcome all of our super achievers onto the broadcast. So if you are just tuning in and you are joining us, go ahead, drop your name in the comment section and let us know you're here. Also, let us know where you are watching from. We always like to know where our super achievers hail from. Take a moment to share with us who you serve in your business and how you serve in your business, because we would definitely love the opportunity to connect with you deeper. And like we said to the top of the start of the broadcast today, we are in preparation mode for our Unleash the Power of Your Story. We have a 2 day training coming up, but before the 2 day training, we are hosting a free live masterclass. And that masterclass is happening on Thursday, next week, Thursday, May the 17th at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And so if you have not registered and secured your seat on the masterclass, you want to make sure that you do that, because this is where Suzanne and I will be going into a little bit deeper and what it really takes to get hired, seen first, hired, and paid what you are worth. And that's what the masterclass is all about. So if you take a look at the description for the video, you will definitely see the link to the masterclass. Register, secure your seat. We're looking forward to seeing you there. So without any further ado, Suzanne, let's go ahead and get this party bus rocking and rolling.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we're talking about storytelling secrets on Reveal, or revealing storytelling secrets. And like I said, this is one of the biggest things that we hear all the time. People get stuck in in sharing their story. And I saw one of the biggest questions that we get all the time is, I'm going to start off with this one. I don't have a story to tell. And
Hmm.
thinking that their voice doesn't matter.
It's interesting. I did a call last night, actually, and I was on the phone with someone who was questioning if she had a story to tell, and she was sharing how she had sat and listened to one me tell my story and
Mhm.
someone else tell their story, and she was just so moved, so inspired, so touched, and And then again, the question is, but do I have a story? And oftentimes what we come up with is I haven't had any catastrophic things happen to me. Is my story worthy of telling? I've just had everyday challenges. I had someone text me and say to me, "My life has been really good. Who wants to hear a story from me?" And I used to think the same thing. What was really interesting was when the story I told, and the story I often tell, is about the little girl who got embarrassed in front of the room.
Mm-hmm.
That's not catastrophic unless you're the little girl. Like,
Right.
in the scheme of things, I was embarrassed in front of the room. I started to cry and decided I was never ever raising my hand in class again. And that was my decision. Now I tell that story and I tell people it's how I tell the story about the incident that makes it moving. But when you unpack the incident, it's happened to most of us at some point or another. Someone's embarrassed us because we said something or we didn't say something properly or we didn't have an answer. It's a common thing. This is why it works. It's because it's something that's happened to most of us. And so if you're thinking you don't have a story, I believe everybody has a story. If you have lived life and you have been sad, you've been frustrated, you have been challenged, you've had a difficult time doing something, someone has hurt you, betrayed you, um, you failed at something, you have a story to tell. The question is, how do you tell that story so it moves and inspires? So, I'm going to invite everybody to let go of the idea that the story has to be, I fell out of a plane, I was in a plane crash, I got stranded on an island, I lost a limb, I recovered from some really horrible disease, all those different things. And while all those stories have merit, that's where we go to. They're average stories from average people that have extraordinary impact. And learning to tell a story that moves someone about an ordinary circumstance becomes so relatable. This is why we like gossip. And I know I've said this on the call before. This is why we like to watch things unfold in day-to-day lives and we can't keep our eyes off it. This is why there's office talk around the water cooler. This is why people spend hours on the phone talking about nothing. It's because those stories not only move us but connect us. And that is why stories work. So I'm here to tell you your tiny story that you have been dismissing, that has you be a little embarrassed or think, no one wants to hear that. There's somebody out there who needs to hear that story if you tell it properly.
Yeah, and I have to say, I could totally relate to that because I'm going back to the story that you helped me work through. And this is the one where we went on a retreat and I got stuck in a tree zip lining. And I remember thinking after the incident and processing it, you're like, this is the story. I'm like, oh, heck no. This is definitely not the story. Because number one, I was super embarrassed. It was not one of my proudest moments. Um, and it was really hard. It was really hard for me to, step back and take a look and process, my actions, my words going through the experience, how I showed up. And, it was amazing to see when you said, no, pause, put a pin right there. Let's work through this because there's some things that you have learned that you could definitely share with others, but you just have to be able to tell the story the correct way. Because I know after the incident happened and I shared the story without any guidance, I was definitely showing up as the victim.
Yes,
Suzanne,
you were.
I was just about to say, Suzanne, you were the villain, and yes, in case I didn't tell you,
I definitely was.
you were the villain at that point. But by the time we worked through the story, it took on a whole totally different meaning. And so, yeah, that's one of the things that I would definitely have to encourage all of our super achievers is that we all have stories. And I love the fact that you put it is not the big catastrophic things that happen and the practices as we take a look at our everyday experiences. How are we processing the experiences, number one, for ourselves? and then turning them into beautiful ways that we could share to help move our people along.
You know, Tria, I remember the first time I heard a story that just so caught me, and the gentleman who did it, his theme was "Every day is Saturday." Every
Oh,
day is,
yes.
and the story is, he used to work a lot, and his daughter would always go, "Daddy, is it Saturday today?" And because on Saturdays she could spend time with her dad.
Yeah.
Right, little girl, and every day, "Daddy, is it Saturday today?" And he realized that he was living life unavailable. Now I'm telling my version of his story.
Yeah.
And he decided to build his life and his business so every day could feel like Saturday. So every day he would have time with his daughter. Little tiny story.
Yes. But
However,
huge impact.
huge impact, because everybody wanted to know how he could build his life so every day felt like Saturday. And he sold a whole process and a whole training around every day is Saturday. Now, think of the story. It's simple yet profound because of the way he told it. I mean, just the opening line, "Every day is Saturday." You're like, huh, how can every day be Saturday? That's the power of storytelling. Simple incident, how you share it can have a great impact.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And so another secret that we're going to reveal today. Talk about one of the biggest mistakes that we see a lot of people make from the stage, whether it's a small stage or it's a big stage. But the mistake is thinking that their bio is their story.
Oh my goodness, that's a common one, and you know, it's one that makes sense because when you think of building credibility from the stage, you think of, well, what gives me credibility? And we go to what has always given us credibility, which is my skills, my education, my experience, my awards, my recognition. And so people tend to take the stage with telling all that. And what I want you to really think about is if you've had someone introduce you well, they have already told all those things. So you're just repeating what the person who did the intro has already said. So in speaker world, in my world, you're wasting precious time, right? And so what you want to do is you want to tell your story. Now your story isn't about your accolades, your story isn't about your bio, your story is about your journey. And you want to think about what you want to give people insight to is where you started and who you were where you started and how you got to where you are today and all the lessons you had to learn, all the ways you had to grow, all the challenges you had to go through, all the failures you had to survive and rise up from. And you want to take people on this beautiful journey. You want to tell that story. And usually I tell people take one incident and make it impactful and give people an insight into what you had to learn and most importantly who you were required to become to sit in the place that you are today. What that does, Taria, is it gives people insight into stuff your bio can't give.
Yeah.
It gives people insight into stuff that they'll never hear on your bio because you don't write on your bio, "I had this catastrophic failure. I felt like a fool. I didn't want to get out of bed for 2 weeks." We don't say those things. However, why do we want to share those things? Because there's people in the audience struggling, but they want to get where you are. And they're looking at you going, "Oh, you don't understand where I'm sitting," until you pull back the curtains and say, "Let me tell you about my journey." And you reveal some of the things you've gone through. And now you become relatable. Now the distance between where you are and where they are seems to have gotten closer and you become more human to them.
Yeah.
Right? You're no longer the superhero. You're no longer the massive guide. You are the human being who has overcome some things. It builds such credibility because it tells someone, "I know what you're going through and I can help you in a real way, not theoretical, but I understand what it's like to sit in your seat and struggle That's huge, particularly when I'm feeling isolated as a person who's struggling. That's why we tell our story. Our bio can't do that.
And it's so absolutely true because I'm gonna say this now. Being in the space that I'm in, I've had the opportunity to attend and participate in a lot of speaker training programs, and I've had the opportunity to sit under a lot of mentors and coaches that I consider phenomenal. But the thing about it is, I wasn't able to move in the way that I needed to move to shift from being afraid of public speaking until I met you. And it was your story that did it for me. So you see, up until that point, I've listened to other mentors and coaches talk about the importance of speaking and telling stories. And yes, they have their stories and their experiences to share. But to be honest with you, Suzanne, I don't think I ever heard anyone said, I was definitely afraid of public speaking. And so when I met you and you said, definitely afraid of public speaking. And you shared your story going back to the little girl and what your experience was all the way back. And I said, oh my gosh, she gets it because this is totally, totally me. And that's one of the ways that we started on our journeys together. And so as we continue to learn each other and know each other and grow, I always am amazed at the conversations. And this is what I want people to get. So it's not just the stories that you tell on the stage, but it's the stories that you have in your normal communication, whether it's on the phone or whether you have the opportunity
Mhm.
to meet your people in person. What are the experiences that you're going to share that will first endear them to you? Like you always say, allow them to have that heart to heart connection. And they
Right.
know that this is my person. And I always say it all the time, I'm going to lock my arms with this person and I'm going to journey along.
Mhm.
That's
Mhm.
your
Absolutely. You
story,
know,
right?
it's interesting because there's a client that I work with who heard me being interviewed by Brother Bedford. And I
Mhm.
was telling the story of when I was financially upside down, suffering in silence, and so down and out that I was going back and forth to the doctor, thinking there was something wrong with me because I was just so exhausted and I was on the brink of burnout and didn't know it. And she said to me, when I heard that story, I had to find you. And she reached out to me on Messenger and I answered. And she was shocked that I answered. And she said to me, I heard your story and said, this woman understands what's going on for me. She gets me. And that started a journey of over 5, 6 years. That's the power of story. Because if I had sat on the call and talked about the successes I've had, I wouldn't have been relatable to where she was. And remember, people don't hire me because they're experiencing success in all areas of their life. They hire me or you because there's an area that they're struggling and they're looking for someone who understands that struggle and can move them. I understood the struggle because I had a similar, not exact, circumstance, and she said this person can relate to me. That's what stories do. Nothing else can do it in the same way.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I think I'm going to switch gears a little bit and jump into another big one. So this is one that I have heard it. I know you probably hear it all the time too. And it's no one is inviting me to talk. I don't have opportunities or enough opportunities to speak. How can I get more speaking engagements? Like we get it all the time.
It's interesting because when I started, no one is inviting me to talk either. And even as I got rather good, no one was inviting me to talk. So I decided I was going to just start talking. Now, back in the day, there was conference calls, and
Mhm.
I decided I was going to do a conference call every morning for 30 minutes. My conference call started with 6 people to which I invited. And as I continued to do the call, at the end of the day, my conference call was over 100 people Monday to Friday. And that existed for almost 4 years. Now, What was interesting about that was that conference call created a buzz.
Mm.
And people started to check me out. And then I started speaking on small stages. And I remember going to Action Think Tank and other like meetup groups and women's networks, and just speaking for free and just getting out there and speaking. And people would be, if you're saying I'll speak for free, people are like, okay. However, it built credibility. Then we got onto social media, and I remember Miss Taria Hodge, social media strategist, told me I was going to host a show every week for a number of years. I was like, seriously? I
Yeah.
began to consistently show up. That was my stage. And as I continued, then I started doing YouTube videos, and I just started speaking and creating exposure and building my credibility. The other thing was I kept telling people, I'm going to become an international speaker. I am an international speaker. Well, I became an international speaker, but I had declared it. And what I'm saying to everyone is, becoming anything and being invited to do something, you first have to become it for yourself. You have to show up and you have to create the opportunity for yourself. And then, because that's what leadership is. And then as you create the opportunity for yourself, you begin to build credibility. And then the invitations will begin to happen. I am a big one on earn the right. And it's really, can I earn the right to be on someone else's stage? I remember the first time I spoke on George Fraser's stage, and I had been going to his event for like 5 years at that point in time. And when I met him and spoke to him, he was like, "Are you good on stage though?" And he ended up getting a reference, and they said, "Oh my gosh, she'll crush it." And he was like, "Oh, right. I earned the right." And then he kind of gave me a small audition, and he was like, "Ooh, there's something about you." And I earned the right. That could only happen because I was speaking in other places.
Yeah.
And so I, in many ways, created I prepared so that when the opportunity came, I was ready.
Yeah.
So use your social media platforms, use your YouTube channel, use whatever you can, create your own small event, use every opportunity to create the preparation so that you get enough exposure so that when the moment is ready, you're ready. That also means you got to practice, right? Because I know people want to be invited to speak, but they're not speaking. And I'm a big believer in creating my own luck by acting as if, doing the thing, and creating the energy that says, I believe this is going to happen. So I am going to prepare for the day. I'm going to practice. I'm going to be so ready that when they find me, they'll be like, dang, where have you been speaking? In my closet, in my backyard. You know what I mean?
No, it's absolutely true, because I love what you said. Because you said you have to show up as a person who you want to be, and as you said that, one of the things that came to mind is be, do, have. So sometimes people think is that they're going to start off with the thing that they want. They're going to start off with the have. But the have is actually the last step. You have to, be first. And so if you consider yourself a speaker, create your own opportunities to speak, create your own stage, because you also said something that was very important that I think a lot of people miss. While they're waiting to get invited to stages, conference holders, event holders, people who create conferences, all of that stuff, they're looking for speakers. But if they can't go to your social media and see evidence that you're a speaker, then why would they invite you to their stage? So you have the opportunity to show up, create your own stage, show up. And so as you are positioning for those opportunities, just know people are checking you out as well. And it just makes it a whole lot easier when they could say, oh, I see your body of work. This is your body of work right here. I could go to your YouTube channel and binge watch all of your videos like people binge watch Netflix. And that's like the ultimate thing that we all want as speakers
Absolutely.
and we all want as entrepreneurs, you know? So yeah, you do have to show up.
Yeah, and I want everyone who's listening to also consider that there's always a stage, and you never know when the stage is going to be given to you. And so it is oftentimes in the boardroom, it is in the meeting when someone asks a question. How you get up and answer that question, how you respond in a meeting, how you show up. You know, we got asked a question in an event that I was at recently, and how I answered the question created a bunch of opportunities for me.
Yeah.
And so a stage is not big all the time. It might be you stood up out of your seat and
Yeah.
responded. And so my big question is, how ready are you?
Yeah.
How impressive is your readiness?
Yeah.
Those are the things you want to ask yourself as you say, I want the invitation, because people are watching and you don't know who's in the room when you stand up to make a response. Well, I did not know who was in the room. And when I found out, I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And so seize those opportunities and make them count.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, wow. See, this is why we call this our fireside chats because these conversations. So, you know, I'm muy caliente. So I'm gonna go ahead and let you share like last minute words, last minute takeaways for our super achievers before we wrap this session up.
You know, I do this work because there was a point where I was too afraid to speak. And I was caught in the fear, the anxiety, and in the conversation that I wasn't good enough. I didn't have that gift. I didn't have that talent. Luckily, someone kept tapping me on the shoulder and telling me I was a speaker. Before I answered the call, because I was in total avoidance, I can't tell you how many opportunities I shied away from, didn't get, or just missed out on because I either refused to speak or wasn't ready and didn't feel capable. I didn't have the confidence. When I started speaking, it was the game changer, not only because I was able to take stages, but it grew and built my confidence. I believe I can stand up anywhere and articulate a point that will move people. We're talking about owning the place where you stand right now and owning it in such a way that when you speak, people will listen. And when you speak, people will be impressed. That's really what we're wanting for each and every person. So we're not talking about speaker and it has to be a big stage. I'm talking about occupying the stage right where you stand and giving yourself the gift of being so prepared that you create opportunities for yourself and you create stages for yourself.
Absolutely. Love it. All right. So there you have it, super achievers. And so, like I said before, we're doing this series of fireside chats. We're here until next Wednesday, the 15th, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So we will be back tomorrow, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, to have more of this conversation. And so, like I said, this is gearing up to our Unleash the Power of Your Story program. And as part of that, we are hosting a free masterclass that's coming up on Thursday, May the 16th, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you have not secured your spot, I mean, it's super easy, visual for everyone. It's going across the screen. So you can either grab it from there or look in the description of the video. And we are looking forward to seeing you then. And so with that being said, super achievers, take care. And we will be back here tomorrow afternoon, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
All right, then. Take care, everyone.